Toronto Argos, go, go, go. Pull together, fight the foe, foe, foe. Scoring touchdowns for the blue on blue. The Argos will win for you. Full of fight and courage, you can't stop. They pile up the points until they reach the top. Pull together till the Grey Cups won. Go Argos, go, go, go. Go Toronto Argos, go, go, go. Pull together, fight the foe, foe, foe. Scoring touchdowns for the blue on blue. The Argos will win for you. Full of fight and courage, you can't stop. They pile up the points until they reach the top. Pull together till the Grey Cups won. Go Argos, go Toronto, go. Go Argos, go, go, go.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Season 3, Episode 7 of the Argo Bounce live audio show with co-hosts Nick Small, Chris Pomay, a weekly podcast show devoted to the CFL's 18-time Grey Cup champion Toronto Argonauts. And I hope everyone's doing well on this Monday, July 31st, 2024. And I'm looking forward to my show with Nick tonight. Unfortunately, we don't have a guest tonight, but Nick and I have a lot to talk about. We're going to break down the Argos' 16-14 overtime win over Winnipeg, preview their game against Calgary, and maybe talk a little bit about the quarterback play between Dukes and Arbuckle, and maybe a little bit about the latest on Nathan Rourke possibly coming back to the Canadian Football League and which team might be wanting to sign him, which he probably would want a lot of money as well. And I'm going to bring on my co-host, Nick Small, for episode 7 of the Argo Bounce live audio show. Good evening, Nick. How you doing?
Hey, Chris. Nice hat.
Nice hat, Nick. And I wanted to get into that, man. I know we differ on that, but that was a great promotion Saturday night. And pretty well everyone that came to that game was wearing the hat. And I heard a lot of great comments about the hats. And I thought it was a great promotion. And they drew their biggest crowd of the year, Nick, just under 15,000, a 15% increase from their previous game.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, it didn't reach the 20,000 like you were hoping for. It was more in my ballpark. I had the 1450 range, so it hit my target. And yes, like you said, having the hats as a promotion, something that was very noticeable in the crowds. I'm just rewatching the game here, having it on in the background, so just taking some glimpses up at there and seeing the hats, everybody wearing them, and the fact that a lot of fans too were sitting in the areas like on the east side of the field in the sun, where normally people don't really tend to sit in that area. So to have just really good broad coverage across for the entirety of the game was great to see.
Absolutely. And it was an Afro-Caribbean heritage night there too as well. So I thought the weather was perfect. I thought the giveaway was perfect. And I would like to see the Argos continue to do giveaways, like maybe a t-shirt or a towel, bobblehead, stuff like that. I really do feel they can get this attendance up to 20,000 a game. They just need a little bit of help. And Brad, now I like the promotions idea. And we have a fan, by the way, Rick, who was on our show a couple weeks ago. Nick, I'm going to let you answer first. Hey, Chris and Nick, it's Rick. After Toronto's quarterback struggle last week, who do you see starting? Who do you see looking towards Calgary, and who are you guys starting this week after the struggle? Nick, you go first for Rick.
Yep. So just to go back on your point earlier, for what the game was, it was kind of a little bit of a stinker, especially offensively, as we saw in the statistics, and just having the replay up, seeing the game again, a lot of that is reflected in that. But at the same time, like you pointed out, what was great about it was that there wasn't such a negative criticism of the fan experience. The fan experience of those who went was extremely positive. And of course, the giveaway hats were one big part. For me, the part I like Always the big spender that I am. I got one of the nice new Toronto Argonauts hats, very loudly and proudly claiming myself as an Argonauts fan. And another great promotion they had that night was that almost all of the merchandise was 30% off on the at the stores inside the stadium. So that was a really great promotion. And then yeah, to kind of roll into Rick's question, and hello again, Rick, and good to see you. Um, yeah, the big thing that was sort of the takeaway with this game, they did not play very well offensively, but fortunately, Pete Martin's ghost was smiling down on us as we were able to squeak away by the skin of our teeth. And yeah, it poses a big challenge right now with how the last couple of games they haven't looked quite productive offensively. And what was really challenging with this game was that Cameron Dukes didn't look that great out of the gate, and Nick Arbuckle wasn't all that much better. So it's going to pose some QB questions now as they head into a doubleheader against Calgary, a team which is also kind of Jekyll and Hyde like Toronto. They've been unstoppable at home, like they beat BC after all, but then they go to Ottawa and put up an absolute stinker and get thumped by them. So it's it's a really difficult situation for Toronto this week going into Calgary on the road, a place where they traditionally have not played very well.
Yeah, here's some stats for you. Since 2014, Calgary has owned the Argonauts 15-2, including 8-1 against the Argos at home. And the Argos last year didn't have that many bad games other than the East final against Montreal and the game against Calgary on the road. So Calgary's coming into this game 3-4, Toronto's 4-3.
Mm-hmm.
Jake Mayer looks good at times. This is a really intriguing matchup because neither team is setting the world on fire, and the Argonauts do not play well generally in Calgary. And
Yeah,
Nick Arbuckle, it's not Nick Arbuckle, but Ryan Dinwiddie has got to make a decision. And I am going to answer Rick's question. I believe not that Arbuckle lit it up against Winnipeg by any means, but I believe him being a veteran, I believe he's going to get his first start of the season on Sunday night against Calgary. My gut feeling.
yeah, that's probably what is most likely to be the case right now. When watching some of the replays, it does seem like a lot of it was sort of timing related. Um, on some of the passes, which might be as to why they're a little bit off, and that might just come because he hasn't gotten enough reps with some of the first string wide receivers that normally go with the starting quarterback. Um, the one that I think's really the big wild card too is Brian Scott. You gotta wonder, because when he came in that one game against Montreal, it was garbage time, albeit, but he's probably the closest to having that kind of strong arm pocket passer quarterback that Chad Kelly was. So, like, part of me would really like to see him go out and slug it out for a game just to see what happens. And if any point's the time to do it, it would be these last couple games, because after this doubleheader against Calgary, Chad's gonna come in and he's gonna expect to take the first string reps. You're putting all the money into it. So if and given how the way things went, you we're 4-3 now. It's where we want it to be. It was an important win to stay in that race for second right now, and potentially to beat Montreal for first. That's definitely not off the table. And if they're able to pull 2 wins against Calgary, it's huge. What I think's been really frustrating watching these games the last couple weeks, the game against Saskatchewan and the game against Hamilton, there were games they probably should have won but beat themselves. But then this week, Winnipeg beats themselves against us in a game which they should have completely thumped us, but they made the same kind of mistakes that we
Five
made
turnovers,
against Hamilton.
five turnovers, 4 fumbles, and the pick 6. By the way, hey,
Yeah.
I wanted to bring this up too. I know Nathan Rourke got cut by the Giants, and there's a possibility come back to the CFL. But there've already been rumors about him going to the Argonauts. There's no way they're going to pay him big bucks along with Chad Kelly. So I don't think there's going to be any Nathan Rourke in Toronto. I think the Argos are going to have Kelly back and end up having to cut one of those 4 quarterbacks. But I really don't see Nathan Rourke ending up with the Argonauts. I'll be shocked.
There is, I'm going to take it one step further and say he's not going to go back to a CFL team this season. I just do not see it happening while he still has this NFL dream, and it's money, as we've seen, is not a part of it because he's been given enough guaranteed salary on the practice rosters that he had with I forget he had before New England, but with the teams he's tried out with, he's got enough salary that monetary value isn't necessarily a problem. And what I find really interesting with that, though, is we've seen some criticism over having the Canadian ratio here in the CFL, and you do have to wonder how him being a Canadian quarterback who has clearly shown in every league he's played and he's excelled in, and even in preseason in the NFL, he's done extremely well, that why nobody wants to give him a shot, when I would make a very strong argument he's better than probably the bottom half of any of the NFL teams' quarterbacks. Like you look at New England, or sorry, not New England. Like even New England, New York, Vegas, the Raiders. Like, you really want to choose some of their guys above Nathan Rourke the way he's
The
proven
problem
himself?
the problem with Rourke is he only played in the CFL for about a year and a half, and I understand why he wanted to go to the NFL and chase his dreams, but the money is important, but the thing is he's wasting his prime years being a backup or being cut, and to me, I think he's better off coming back to the CFL, getting that number 1 starter job, and establishing himself again and reminding the NFL this is how good he is. I know the money's important, but for a professional athlete and a quarterback, you need to be playing as much as you can and to get his name out. And unfortunately, the NFL is very difficult, especially with getting quarterbacks from the CFL. Even Jeff Garcia had to work his butt off when he got to the NFL to get his chance to be a starting quarterback as well. And he proved he was obviously a starting quarterback, Nick.
I don't even know where Rourke would end up if he does end up moving back to the CFL, though, because like I kind of said before when we were talking about Trey Ford, every team's basically got an established quarterback. And do you really want to, like, if you're Montreal or Saskatchewan and Trevor Harris and Cody Fajardo are hurting, do you really want to take a chance at cutting them and throw up at least $1 million at Nathan Rourke for just the possibility he might play for them, let alone having to now learn a whole new system and then coming out of the gate? I just don't know where there would really be a landing place for him if he even did want to come back into the CFL, because it's like the obvious place would be BC, but Vernon Adams has played probably is the best quarterback right now, other than maybe Fajardo with the injury. So I just don't know where he would go.
It's interesting. I would say right now, if I had to guess, I would go with Saskatchewan, but Shea Patterson's played well, but I would say right now Saskatchewan would be his best bet.
Yeah, but because of that lack of really an opening in the CFL, that's kind of why I see him still sticking it out in the NFL. Why not? If you're not going to play in the CFL anyways, why not continue trying to see training camps and third string roster deals and all that kind of stuff?
We have another comment from the 716 Sports Blizzard podcast in Buffalo, New York. Name is Robbie Schneider. He says, hello, Nick and Chris. How about the Argos win on Saturday? Woohoo, go Argos. It was not a pretty game by any means, but they did get the W. And Nick, since we have Robbie watching our show tonight, why don't you plug your appearance on his show Friday night?
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Yeah, I'm going to be joining Robbie on Friday. We are going to be talking a little bit about the Toronto Argonauts and their season so far, as we always do here. But we're also going to talk a little bit about Buffalo sports for someone who's lived in Toronto and the GTA as long as I have. I've never actually been to Buffalo, unlike Chris, who covers a whole lot of coverage with the Bisons and the Bandits. So I'm hoping that Robbie can educate me a little bit, teach me a little bit about Bill's Mafia culture. And who knows, maybe we can apply a little bit of that here to Toronto. Maybe bring a couple of extra tables that we can smash at the tailgate or something. So I'm looking forward to it, and it should be a great talk on Friday. So if you get the chance, come tune into Robbie Schneider's 716 Blizzard Sports podcast on Friday.
8:15 p.m. By the way, Rick and Robbie, if you have more questions for me and Nick or anyone else who's watching this live stream, if you got questions for either one of us or both of us, just put them in the comment section as well. The more comments, the better the show gets as well.
While we're plugging in people, how about Jared Brinkman's parents coming out and saying hello to us when we were heading into the game on Saturday? That was quite an awesome experience.
Yeah, it was nice. They approached me when I was going to my seat, and the gentleman wearing the 91 jersey goes, "Are you Chris?" And I'm like, "Yeah." He goes, "Oh, I'm Jarrett Brinkman's dad, Mike, and this is his wife, and we really enjoy your show with Nick, and we met Nick just before you, and it was great to meet them. They drove up from Iowa to see their son play, who was obviously injured, but shout out to Mike and his wife, and I'm glad they love the CFL. And Mike couldn't come on tonight, but in the future, he said he'd love to come on and talk about his son's college and CFL career with the Argonauts and coming up to Canada as well.
Yeah, good to commitment when your own son's injured, but willing to come up to continue to support the team. And you see that with Jared Brinkman as well. And I had to ask about that with the injury. Not so much speculating on when he's coming back or whatever, but just the attitude, that the mindset that you're in, where you're not able to play on the field, but you still want to do everything you can and contribute to your team to win games. And that's why I think football is the ultimate team sport in a lot of ways, because everybody's in such a different level of physique and ability and role responsibility, and you're always trying to do whatever you can to help your team succeed. And in the case of someone like Brinkman, when you're not able to be on the field, you're able to hold a clipboard and to watch the game and to understand where, in the case of him, where you're looking at run blocking schemes or where their slide protection is, and being able to take advantage of that to relay that to someone like Jake Serezna or Robbie Smith, who's out there and contributing to them succeeding that way. And we saw a lot of that success for what was kind of lacking on the offensive side. The defense managed to put a ton of pressure on Zach Caleros, even to the point where they had to pull him for a little bit midway through the second.
Yeah, it's because he had a head injury. One of the
Yeah.
hits, his head hit the ground and the spotter saw it. Hey, I want to give a shout out to Steve Ayers. He's the father of Michael, who plays for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. And next week, I'll air my interview with Steve, who him and his wife and kids drove from Columbus, Ohio, to come see their son play, and he absolutely loves the CFL. And as an American, he doesn't know why more Canadians don't like the CFL. And I'm finding for more Americans actually enjoy our game better than the people in our country. And people don't have to realize the CFL is a great game. And
Need to show that to the Toronto peeps, man.
yeah. And you see what the NFL is doing now? You can't do an onside kick now until the fourth quarter. So the NFL is really, I'm hoping the CFL does not follow them on these special team rules.
Yeah, well, I've been on it before. I said, they talk about how 1 in 8 plays are special teams, but 1 in 6 injuries are on special teams. But then that also means the 90% of the plays and the injuries, 4 out of 5 or 5 out of 6 are during regular offense defense scrimmage. So you're it's really how nitpicky and framing you are with that sort of stuff. And I think it has hurt the NFL product, because it's made kickoffs becoming almost irrelevant. I'm starting to wonder if they're going to be to the point where it's like flag football, or if it's fourth down, you don't opt to punt, you just, or do an actual punt, you just say punt, and now the ball goes automatically 40 yards down the field, and that's it. And I think that hurts the game. It's a shadow of what it was, even dating back into the late 1800s and early 1900s of football.
Yep. Nick, before we get to some more questions or whatever, I wanted to play an interview I did with an Argo fan, season ticket holder since the 70s. And he was actually won a medal at the Paralympics for Canada in the 80s. And he's been a season ticket holder with the Argos since the 70s when they played at Exhibition Stadium. And I just want to play it's about a 3-minute interview with Gino. And he's just one of their diehard fans. And that's the thing with the Argonauts. They might not have the most people at their games, but a lot of their fans are diehard fans, and Gino's one of them.
We definitely saw that when a couple of those penalties came out late in the game. They're while we may not have the strength of numbers, the voices are loud.
It was loud, yeah. And two of my friends who'd never been to BMO Field said for 15,000 people, they made more noise than the crowd at the Rogers Center for the Blue Jays, Toronto so-called baseball team.
I believe it.
All right, here's the interview, courtesy of Live with CDP with Gino. Just let me know, Nick, if you can hear the volume okay. Just give me 1 second. Good afternoon, everybody. This is Chris Pomay live from BMO Field, and I have a special guest here today. His name is Gino. He's a longtime season ticket holder of the Toronto Argonauts, and we're going to talk to him how he became an Argo fan and season ticket holder and get his thoughts on tonight's matchup. Hi, Gino. How you doing?
Good, thanks. How are you?
I'm doing well. What do you think of the game tonight between the Blue Bombers and Argonauts here at BMO Field at 7:00?
Well, I hope it's competitive because I love the football here. And the Argos, I've been a fan for so long. I think it'll be a good game. I hope they go with the third-string quarterback just for a change, Arbuckle, to see what he can do.
I agree with you. I like the way Arbuckle had command of the offense against Hamilton and how he got the receivers involved, and that's going to be a key tonight. Hey, Gino, you've been an Argo season ticket holder since the 70s at CNE and Exhibition Stadium. Just thoughts on those days and becoming an Argos fan back then.
Oh, those days were great. I mean, it was a lot of rah-rah. The fans were sold out every game. It was hard to get tickets back then, but it was cold. In the wintertime, when near the end of the season, when the snow started to hit, it was cold, but it was fun.
Thoughts on the Argos moving back to the site of the former Exhibition Stadium here at BMO Field?
I love being outside. I think it's a great idea. When we were inside, we were so far away from all the players and stuff, you didn't get the feel of the game. Being at this field, you get the feel of the game again.
Since you've been a fan since the 70s, do you have a favorite Argo team and moment?
When they won the Grey Cup in Hamilton. I forget who the quarterback is on the top of my head.
96?
Yes.
96.
That was great because the snow was going and we pulled it out, and it was a lot of fun.
I was going to say, for me, it was the 83 Grey Cup team that in that 31-year Grey Cup drought, beating BC 18-17. Going to ask you, Gino, thoughts on the passing of Pete Martin, the former Argo linebacker and longtime broadcaster for the team?
Yeah, that was sad to hear because I love the broadcasting. I love the CFL. I know a lot of people talk about the NFL, but this is our game, and he was a great broadcaster, and he loved the game, and it's sad to see somebody who was such a good Argo promoter gone.
Thoughts on tonight's game and what kind of a score do you see between the Argos and Bombers? This is a critical game. Winnipeg's 2-5, and the Argos are 3-3 in the very tough East Division this year.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a close game. I don't think it's going to be a blowout, but I hope the Argos can, pull it out. I would say probably by a field goal.
All right. Well, Gino, I want to say thank you for doing this live with CDP Sports and Entertainment Talk Show on WQEE 99.1 FM. I hope you enjoy the game here today at BMO Field. And final thought.
Well, thanks for having me on, and go Argos, and you enjoy the game as well.
Thank you, Gino. Thoughts, Nick?
Well, he was right about Argos winning by a field goal. I don't think anybody had the overtime prediction on it, but yeah, it was definitely a close game. Just not the way I think we expected it to be close. But it was a true defensive slugfest, and fortunately, the Bombers made a few too many mistakes for that Toronto were able to capitalize on.
And Nick, just thoughts on the Argos free hat giveaway for the first 10,000 fans and the Afro Caribbean Heritage Promotion pregame at the Shipyard. I think you were in the parking lots, but it was a really good environment for the pregame, especially with the extra fans there on Saturday night.
Yeah, the big thing with it was that as we kind of saw with the subpar performance on the field, at least offensively speaking, it was able to generate still a lot of excitement and hype and fan buzz, and it kept the fans staying at the game. The halftime show, my dad's only been to one game this year, and it was this game against Winnipeg because my dad's a huge Mike O'Shea fan, and he said that this halftime show was one of the best halftime shows they've had there, and stuff like that's really able to keep the group engaged, to keep them in their seats, especially when there's time that they would be doing other things or around the concourse, or even leaving sometimes if it was a kind of a snooze fest like this game was in terms of scoring. Because of that, it allowed everybody to stay engaged, and then late in the game you were able to have those loud boos, especially during the whole ref you stink chants that were going around after a couple of those penalty calls.
I think 5 out of the 6 Argo penalties came in that fourth quarter. I believe the Argos only had 1 penalty through the first 3 quarters of that game. A lot of them came in at the end
Yeah.
of the fourth quarter.
Yeah, they were much more disciplined this game, which I really liked. And yeah, to kind of go with what was a lot of the criticism that the referees took, I think frankly they were absolutely incorrect on the procedure call, because the Winnipeg defender clearly passed the neutral zone, and I don't know why someone up in the command center in Toronto, other part of Toronto, doing that didn't see that. And then the illegal block, it was high, but he was still within his chest, so it shouldn't have been a hold in my opinion. And then the pass interference, that's the one I can kind of objectively be like, yeah, the ball wasn't anywhere close to where the receiver was targeted. But because of the 3 just back to back to back, and Ryan Dinwiddie's frustration with it, and the fans' frustration for that matter, it just led to a perfect storm. Which really, these things, we've seen this happen a couple times now at BMO, and all it really does is it just gets the fans so intently focused on the game, which is exactly what you want in some of these tight late moments. And of course it led to a really crucial 3rd and 1, first by Toronto to extend their lead, which they weren't able to, and then later on Winnipeg had the opportunity to do the same thing. They could have kicked a field goal and then forced Toronto with the ball late to try to make a push to tie the game for overtime, but instead they tried to go for it. And I know there's a lot of controversy over whether Streveler actually made it or not. I was sitting pretty much right where the line was. I'm around between the 40 and 45-yard line there behind the Argos bench in the upper level. Streveler did not cross the line. I can guarantee you that. So,
But I wanted to point Dinwiddie too. When the Argos were up 7 points, they had it 3rd and 1 at the Winnipeg 30-yard line, 31-yard line, 47, 48-yard field goal for Liam. I would have taken the points there and made it a 10-point game. Both teams failed to capitalize on 3rd and 1, and I just thought the Argos, Cameron Dukes came in for that 3rd and 1 play, and it just backfired. And then Winnipeg got that touchdown, and thankfully that didn't hurt them at the end. I wanted to ask you this, Nick. When Sergio Castillo missed his field goal in overtime, Javarian Grant didn't bother trying to run the ball out or kick it out. He just dropped it for the Rouge. I'm not saying that was going to make a difference, but I would have tried to run that ball out of the end zone and not given up any points or kicked it out of there. What's your thoughts on Grant's play in overtime where he just let the ball go out of bounds for the point?
Well, in that particular play, I wasn't particularly worried about it. It was so far back in the end zone. The thing you worry too is, don't forget, if you step out of bounds and then go back and play, now you get a penalty for being an illegal participant, and then now Winnipeg gets a fresh set of downs. So personally, I think you did the right thing with how
Okay.
deep the ball went. I
Okay.
I didn't really have a problem with it. And in overtime, so for those viewers who don't really know how the overtime works in CFL, funny enough, there is no kickoff, which is kind of, in a weird way, it actually makes it better because of it. You play a mini game. So how it works is that you do the coin toss. Whoever wins determines whether they want to start on offense or defense or defend an end. And then the other option goes to whoever. You play both offense and defense down at the same end of the field. And in overtime was really weird. Sort of the controversial part of that was, so Toronto chose to start on defense. So Winnipeg gets to pick which end they want to play. They chose to play at the end where all the diehard Toronto Argonauts fans are. They could have taken the other end at the north side where there's basically nobody.
Nobody.
But they chose to have the shorter substitution length, but completely surrounded by all of the rabid Argonauts fans, which I think was one of the most terrible decisions you could have made. And it was only a very slight breeze north, so it didn't make much of a difference. But in any case, you start the ball at the 35. So for both Castillo and Liram, like we kind of see, they've been pretty much automatic this year from anywhere within that 40-yard line. So with Castillo missing that attempt, and not by much, like you saw the replays of it, it was just
I was right behind.
fraction.
I was right behind it. Yeah, it was by maybe inches. And
So it's like, put that up on a tee 9 more times for him, and it was a bad snap as well for him that usually sets up those kind of problems. Liram, of course, didn't miss, and you just wonder, like, it could have gone the other way if the snap to Liram was botched. So yeah, I don't have quite necessarily a problem with that. I think the mistake with Winnipeg, it comes on the coin toss. I think it comes from you defending the wrong end rather than going. I understand why you want to go for the shorter positional change, but really, I think, especially on the road in a field like Toronto's, where it's very clear where one side of the fans are, you really should probably play the other end. And then, and that was also the end where he scored. But then to look at earlier than that, really the big mistake, I think, was on that 3rd and 1. Normally in that situation, yeah, I would agree you go for it and kill the clock. But because of that, Toronto had proved the entire game that they were unable to move the ball at all offensively. I would have taken my chances, let them have the ball with 2 minutes left, and see if they can drive the ball down the field. And if they do, it's kind of like that situation in baseball where it's a 3-2 count. Like, I'm telling my pitcher, throw the best pitch straight down the middle, and if he gets a home run off you, well, at least he earned it rather than walking the game-winning run in. That's how I kind of see it. So in that sense, I would have taken the points. But for Toronto, I can understand why they chose to go for it, because if anything, you're killing more clock down. You're putting yourself even more in the field goal range later. If then the next 2 plays you get 2 incomplete passes, you're still well within range to kick a field goal. So, and really for me, the question was, you ran everything one side and tried to fake them out by having Dukes run the other way, but you also had him running straight into Adam Bighill, who is
one of the best
linebackers not named Wyndon McManus.
I don't know. I just, Nick, you make good points, but in that case, I would have taken the 3 points and made it a 10-point game. But they won, and that's the main thing. And we can discuss that all you want. Mike O'Shea has been scrutinized too for some of his decisions as well. And Mike O'Shea is one of the best coaches in the CFL. So.
Well, I'll give a lot of credit to Ben Grant, who, as everybody here probably knows, he is the color commentator for the Toronto Argonauts and part of the X's and Argos podcast in 3 Down Nation. He wrote an excellent article analyzing a lot of the Bombers' woes. And while the injuries to some key wide receivers is a big part of it, the pass
turnovers,
protection,
the pass protection, and turning the ball over. five
Well, the pass
times.
protection's what's led to a lot of the issues, like, the fact that 1 out of every 3 possessions, Zach Collaros is facing massive pressure, and then 1 out of every 5 possessions, he's being sacked. And not only what that does is it not only causes him to rush throws, a lot of the concepts that they've run that have allowed him to throw the ball deep is because they've been able to run deep cross routes, which have set up sort of those pick plays and busts in coverage. And because you don't have the time to be able to set those up, he hasn't been able to throw to begin with. Whereas conversely with the Argonauts, and I see as kind of the problem with Cameron Dukes, and I don't mean to beat up on him. He's a great guy, but where I see with Cam Dukes' problem by comparison, he's getting the 6-second pass protection at times, and he's just standing there not
Holding the
seeing
ball.
guy
He's
open
holding.
downfield.
No, he's got tunnel vision. That's what a quarterback has that doesn't get rid of the ball quick. It's called tunnel vision, and you can see how fast Collaros gets the ball out. I know his offensive line is not that great, but you have to get that football out within 2 seconds. And you're right, some of Duke's issues, he had the ball for 6 seconds, and you can't expect the offensive line to protect you that long all the time.
Yeah, and unfortunately with Arbuckle's case, like, give him credit, he threw the ball downfield, but
He
unfortunately
attempted
they
to,
weren't
yeah.
they weren't they weren't well enough on target, unfortunately, which is, yeah,
And
it's always easy to say when we're sitting in the
yeah,
armchair room. So
yeah,
I will
and
not I will not hold it too hard against him.
and Daniels was a non-factor in this game, and same with Coxey. So they've got to try to get these receivers involved, especially going on the road against Calgary. So I really do think because Arbuckle can throw the deep ball a little bit better than Dukes, I believe Arbuckle is going to start on Sunday against Calgary in my gut feeling.
Yeah, it's all shaping up to an Arbuckle start. Yeah, like you said, what's really important, as I had for my thing last week, they've got to get the wide receivers going to an extent, and you you wonder then how someone like Kadeem Carey will do, because he is facing his former team this week, the next 2 weeks coming up in the home and home.
Absolutely. Hey, Nick, thoughts on the return of defensive back Tavarius McFadden and his play of the game with the pick six for a touchdown on a deflected pass? Just
Yeah,
thoughts on having him come back to the Argos
well,
secondary.
clearly he scored more touchdowns than the whole offense did in 60 minutes of play. So that alone you could say was excellent. But I think a lot of people are going to forget this play really early in the first quarter. It was about 7 minutes to go, I think. It was in that south end zone. Collaros threw a ball pretty much perfect in the corner for his wide receiver, and Tavares McFadden managed to jump up and do one of the one-hander, grab the ball, knock it down. So um, yeah, it was too bad McFadden's didn't really work out in Ottawa and elsewhere. But what's their loss is our gain, because he's looked exceptional in his first game back, and to have a pick six off of it too is exceptional, and really you got to feel good for him for being able to do that, and giving some life back into a DB core that was really struggling up to that point.
Even though the defense gave up 402 yards, getting those 5 takeaways and that pick six, that was the difference in this game. But the defense bent, but they didn't break, and they made the big plays. And Jake Serezna, who they got from the Elks, that was a very good trade by the Argonauts, and I think he had a couple more sacks as well. And yeah, Winnipeg has some major issues with their offensive line and turning the ball over right now. And they're not the same team that they've been the last 5 years. And Father Time catches up to all great CFL teams. And perhaps Father Time and the CFL, the rest of the teams, have caught up to the Winnipeg Blue Bombers.
So you finally given up on thinking that they're going to turn it around eventually? Is that what you're saying?
I still think they can win some football games, but they've got to fix the offensive line, and they got to give Zach Collaros a little more help as well. And the Argos defense did a good job on Brady Oliveira as well. I thought they did a decent job there too. Winnipeg's defense played well, but then is it Winnipeg's defense that shut Toronto down, or was it the Argos offense was that bad?
I think it was the Argos offense being that unproductive, unfortunately. They've just I think because of the way they've been able to read the similar types of plays that they've ran week in and week out. It was that's why they were able to beat BC early on, because it was a new season. You don't really know quite what to expect yet. But now that the book is kind of out on the Argonauts offense, it makes it a lot harder for them to generate anything. And we've seen a lot of reliance on Kadeem Carey so far this year, because they've not been able to throw the ball downfield. And if you're able to take that away, like we saw in Saskatchewan, where Kadeem wasn't really able to run for a whole lot, it just doesn't look good on the Argos offensively. So it's like they're really reeling for something to happen out of the QB room soon. So
But even if let's say Kelly is cleared to come back, he hasn't played in almost a year, and he hasn't had training camp, and it's kind of a lot to expect. Hey, Chad, you haven't played in almost a year. Can you come back and be the savior of this team? So I think they've got to try to do something to get that offense going. Obviously, having him come back at some point will help, but you can't just expect him to come back in and like, okay, Chad, do what you did last year in 2023 and save us. So you know
But
what I mean?
but everybody's saying, "Oh, we can throw $1 million at Nathan Rourke to come and save our team." So if we're calling a spade, if a guy who
That's
hasn't played
true.
all year
True.
is a guy who
Yeah.
hasn't played all year,
Yeah.
regardless of what they've
Yeah.
proven themselves in the past, and like and the Argonauts, I think, are in a situation where they're going to have to play Chad Kelly when he comes back and is eligible to play, because the quarterbacking play has been abysmal. And
I
like
can't disagree. Nick,
barely over 100 yards of
yeah,
offense. You can't.
yeah,
There's
yeah,
nothing else you can do. The bar can't get any lower.
lower.
So
Well, like you said, Marty thinks there, but when he does come back, there's no way the Argos can keep 4 quarterbacks on the roster. So they're going to have to move one of those guys out if Kelly comes back off his suspension. So that's going to be interesting to see who gets moved off the Argos roster when Kelly comes back.
yeah, looking at it objectively, my first thought was it's probably Arbuckle, because he was the late signing and kind of the guy giving that veteran voice. I think he'd probably be the most likely to go. But then again, if over the next 2 games he proves himself, it could end up being Dukes or even Brian Scott, who hasn't even taken a snap yet, aside from some garbage time in
I mean, it's
Montreal. So,
Montreal. It's going to be
um,
interesting.
yeah, the guy I'm really curious for, I would love to see get a shot is Brian Scott, and this is a little bit of my bias as a fan, but um, through camp and this game this week against Winnipeg, he's been one guy who's gone out of his way to come up into the stands in camp, and then later on at the Winnipeg game, as I was seeing him exit his car to head into the stadium, he went out of his way to come over and say hello, and to thank you for the support. So, with a personality like that, someone who's really willing to engage himself with the fans, he does make him out as a guy you really want to root for. And not to knock on any of the other quarterbacks in the room, or any other player for that matter. They're all amazing people, but from what I've seen from Brian Scott especially, he's a guy you really want to root for. And especially because of how he played in that Montreal game, there's that little bit of questioning, like, if he does get a legit shot, what does he bring? Kind of, you know what I mean?
Absolutely. And that leads to my next question, Nick. Who were your Argos 3 stars of the game against Winnipeg?
Yeah, so low hanging fruit time. Tavares McFadden's the obvious one. I thought Deshaun Amos actually played quite well as well. And Winnie McManus on the PRR scores proved that he was still the best linebacker in the league, as with another top score. So I think I'm gonna probably go all defense for my scores this week, because there's not really much I can give offensively, unfortunately. And I will give an honorable mention to the defensive line, because they generated a ton of pressure on Zach Collaros this week.
Yeah, I have McFadden, Jake Serezna, and the front 4. Basically, yeah, I believe everybody on defense. And hey, I was upset when they let Boris Beatty go, who had a great career in the CFL with Montreal and Toronto. But Liam bringing him back, he's been pretty darn reliable, solid. And this was his second walk-off field goal this season at BMO Field to win a game for the Argonauts. Even if it was only a 34-yard kick, he just stays cool and collected, and he's been very solid for the Argos this year.
Captain Clutch. That's what we want to see. So it's been good. The like you kind of mentioned earlier, the one I found of departures and moves around. You mentioned it earlier, Jake Seresna for Curly Giddens. Yeah, I don't think anybody here would think, unfortunately, that Curly Giddens, if he had stayed in Toronto, it would get the offense going the same way that Jake Seresna has been a beast defensively for the team. So.
Absolutely. And that leads my next question. Assessment on this Sunday's opponents on the road against the 3-4 Calgary Stampeders and Jake Mayer. And it's a place that Toronto has never really ever played well in the past. And obviously Calgary is 15 and I believe 15-2 in their last 17 against Toronto, including 8-1 at McMahon Stadium. And I believe the Stampeders haven't lost at home this year so far.
Yeah, this is I'm hoping the Argonauts prove me wrong this week, because whether it's Dukes or Arbuckle at this point, I'm really worried because Calgary is such, like I said earlier, they're really Jekyll and Hyde, and unfortunately at home it's the Jekyll. They're exceptionally good at home, and I I really don't know how they're going to be able to generate the points to be able to stay ahead of them. At home's a different story because the defense seems to get just up on another level that can seemingly overcome anything. But on the road in Calgary, I don't have the same kind of optimism. And you don't want to just say history as your reason why, but I've got Calgary thumping Toronto by at least a good 17 points.
My keys for an Argo win is special teams, punting, field goals, and Grant, if he can either get a touchdown or give the Argos good field position. If he can give them at least consistently good field position, that will help the offense a little bit more, especially if it's not like where they have to go 70, 80, 90-yard drive. So I really feel special teams and the defense has to get some takeaways, and special teams has to make some great plays. And I think if those two units can play well, I think they can beat Calgary on Sunday night. But right now I'm leaning towards Calgary to win this game.
Yeah, my one key, probably, I don't have three, I just have one, and it's throw the ball to some wide receivers and get some passing yardage, because you cannot expect to win CFL games with 120 passing yards like they did this past week. How they even won that game with those kind of numbers is still kind of stupefying to me.
I don't believe the Argos have had one receiver with over 100 yards this year either.
Probably not since the BC game, maybe. And I feel like I've brought that up a few times already earlier in previous episodes. You gotta find a way to get guys catching balls, because you can't just give the ball to Kaneem Carey every time and expect him to truck it for 30 yards a carry. It's just not going to happen. And especially against Calgary, they've got a better run defense than a lot of the other teams in the league.
Nick, I think we're going to agree on this. The starting quarterback for the Argos on Sunday against Calgary, I'm saying it's Arbuckle right now.
Yeah, it probably will be. The thing you wonder then, if he gets first string reps and things don't go well, that's I think the biggest thing you're worried about, because it's then, do we go back to Dukes? Do we give Scott a try? Do we keep Arbuckle in? And then you're really pressing yourself deep into the next game when you're at home against the same opponent on Friday night, I believe. And then the only good thing out of it is, like I said, it's probably going to be your last game where Chad Kelly is the starter for Toronto.
But
after that.
but there's still a thing, and Marty talked to me about it. He still has to get cleared by the CFL. So even if his 9-game suspension's over, he still has to be cleared by the commissioner and the CFL to play again. And the Argos have already said they want him to have at least a week's practice time before he comes back playing. So that situation with Chad Kelly right now is still
Well,
up in the air.
well, that doesn't mean he isn't he's not ineligible to practice with the team. And
Yeah.
from what we've seen from Ryan Dinwiddie's past interviews, is that he is doing everything that the league is mandating, all the sessions that he has to go to, all of that has been taken care of up to this point. And from what we've heard and seen, he is expected to be ready to report to practice. And probably what we will probably see is that week before he's cleared to play, he'll probably be in camp with or in practice with everybody else. Maybe not necessarily taking reps, but he will be there. So there's no doubt in my mind that he's there doing the work necessary to be the starting quarterback of the Toronto Argonauts.
Around the rest of the league, he's going to be booed and vilified. But at home at BMO Field, I'm curious to see when he does get back with the team and he is the starter, how the fan base is going to be receptive to him. I'm just going to be curious to see how that goes.
Yeah, well, if he puts down points and marches down the field like he did when they went 16-2, it's not going to be a problem. But if he puts up the
Picks
performance that he did in the
against
Montreal East Final, then that's going to be a bigger problem. So, if it comes down to that latter thing, then it's really then maybe the Nathan Rourke thing comes on the table. But
I'd
for
say
for
no
now,
chance. I'd say no chance of Rourke because they're already paying Chad Kelly a ton of money this year.
yeah.
There's no way they'd be able to bring Rourke in. If Rourke wants to come back to the CFL, I just don't feel there's any chance it would be Toronto, in my
Yeah,
opinion.
and that's exactly it. Why they have to go to Chad when he comes back. He's not just some guy. He is the defending most outstanding player of the league. So he has to start when he comes in. I can't see it any other way. And like we kind of talked about at the very beginning of the year, if the Argos were 5-1 right now, 6-1, it might
It'd be
be
a
a
different
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 story.
story. Yeah,
But they're 4-3. They've lost 2 games they absolutely should have won by beating themselves with stupid mistakes
mistakes.
and failures to move the ball down the field. And they scraped this last one by the skin of their teeth. So
Yeah.
you don't have a choice. You have to put Chad in when he's ready.
And finally, Nick, CFL week 9 already. Ottawa's got a bye week this week. So we've got BC Winnipeg Thursday night, Montreal Hamilton Friday night, Edmonton Saskatchewan Saturday night. Trey Ford is now the starter. I don't know what's going to happen with McLeod Bethel Thompson, but I do feel going forward with the Elks, you got to play Trey Ford the rest of the year. You got to find out if this guy is your franchise quarterback because Bethel McLeod Thompson, whether you like it or not, is at the end of his career, and you know what you're getting with him. So I'm really intrigued with that matchup because Saskatchewan's got a very good defense, and they're much better than the Hamilton defense. So I want to see how Trey Ford does against a Corey Mace defense on Saturday night. And then Sunday night, the biggest game of the week, I think, because we're Argo fans, Toronto and Calgary, with Ottawa having their bye week. I'm going to go first. I'm going to go with BC over Winnipeg. Montreal Hamilton, Cordy Fitzgerald is going to be playing. Got to go with the Alouettes. I can't see the Cats winning 3 straight games. And Edmonton, Saskatchewan, got to go with Corey Mason, the Rough Riders. And then Sunday, you're going to hate me, but I'm going to go with the Stampeders to win this game 24-17.
Yeah, this is probably the sports bookies have kind of shown this is probably one of the easiest weeks to make picks if you're going for the favorites. I'm in full agreement. BC over Winnipeg, Montreal over Hamilton, Saskatchewan over Edmonton, and unfortunately Calgary over Toronto. I hope, like I say every time when I pick against the Argos, it's hard because I'm trying to look at it objective based on who everybody's got. But yeah, if we get the road Jake Mayer at home, I could definitely see Toronto torching them. But it's like I said in the Hamilton game, for example, got to be able to put points up early and have Calgary chase, I think will be an important part if they want to be able to win a road game. And I just don't know if I can see it happening with them right now, especially after the performance they had offensively this past week against Winnipeg. So I'm Calgary as well.
And a shout out, there is an Argos viewing party. I want to give a shout out to Jim Noble of the Argo fan group of Lindsay, Ontario. I guess they're having a viewing party at One Eye Jack at 171 Kent Street in Lindsay, Ontario. So if you're watching or listening to this, check out the One Eye Jack restaurant on 171 Kent Street in Lindsay, Ontario, and you can watch the game and have food and drinks there as well. So a shout out to the Argo group from Lindsay, Ontario.
Shout out to Will Gerler, Adam Goss, and a couple other people who I cannot name at this point in time who will be going out to Calgary for that game. I'm sure Argo Ginger's probably going there as well. So I'll shout out those guys as well. I would have liked to have gone, but work schedule's been a little bit nuts this week. So unfortunately, that was not the case. But I know you guys will represent the Double Blue proud there. And by all means, while as a prognosticator, we can't always pick the Argos to go 60-2 every year. But as a fan, I absolutely want the Double Blue to win every game. So enjoy the time and go Argos.
And I'm curious to see who the crew will be Sunday night. I'm assuming it's going to be Dustin Nelson and Glenn Suter. That's who I'm predicting for that game Sunday.
Oh yeah, for the TV commentary. Yeah, I just I've always got a soft spot for Andre Proulx, the best referee in the CFL. If we're talking about that aspect of things.
And guys, you can check out the website at argonauts.ca and get your tickets at single tickets off argonauts.ca. Game will be on at 7 o'clock TSN and on the radio TSN 1050 with Mike Hogan and Ben Grant. I think they'll come on the air at 6:30 Sunday night for the 7 o'clock kickoff as well.
Yeah, they might be a bit later because it's a road game. One thing I do want to point out before we go off there, the practice charts have been out for the injury reports. Flo Rumalote was full in practice on Wednesday. Winnie McManus did not participate on Wednesday with a groin injury. Thadric Hansen did not participate. Kerfala Exume was full. And Jake Stresno was limited, was still at that nagging shoulder. But I expect Win and Jake will probably be okay. But if you're talking about an X factor, another former Calgary Stampeder and Flora Malade, he might be the kind of guy where if he comes back, especially missing Jared Brinkman, that might be just what it takes to push the D line over the edge and get Jake Mayer scrambling early.
I'm going to go with Kadeem Carey. I think he's going to want to show his former team that they made a mistake letting him go. So I'm going to go with Kadeem Carey. But your pick, Nick, is good as well. And I do think the Argos are capable of winning this game. It's not like, oh my God, they're playing the 2007 New England Patriots who couldn't be beat. I do think they can win this game if they can play clean football, no mistakes, be disciplined, and their defense can get a couple of turnovers and they can get some big special teams play and just try to give Carey the ball more. I know against Calgary, they ran the ball with him for 10 times for 62 yards. That's 6.2 yards a carry against Winnipeg. That's pretty good. They need to give him the ball a little bit more than that. He had 6 catches out of the backfield for 35 yards. So I really think they're going to have to give Carey even more of a workload until they can get better play out of their quarterbacks going forward.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of in disagreement with that because I don't know how much more you can give to Carey before you become too one-dimensional. You're already very one-dimensional because we've seen the only thing that they can do is give the ball to Kadeem Carey and have him run. They not saying that their run blocking isn't good, but they need to find a way to get the ball to wide receivers because, like I said, you can't throw 120 yards a game and expect to win in the CFL. Like
no, I agree. I agree, but I really
you need to move away. You need to move away from Kadeem Carey and get the ball.
I disagree. I know what you're saying, Nick, and you make good points, but I just think they've got it. Carey only had the ball 16 times. He can catch the ball too. So, okay, if you don't want him to run the ball 20, 25 times, give him the ball more out of the backfield. They're going to have to go with short passes. Obviously, they can't get the long passes going right now, but I feel Carey's got to have a little bit more of a workload against Carey, and I really do feel he's going to want to show up his old team. But Nick, you do make good points too. So it's going to be an interesting game Sunday, regardless.
Yeah, 16 carries, and what, 6 pass targets, and out of 140 plays total. I still think that's probably a bit. I don't think you really want to go over than that, but yeah, we'll have to agree to disagree on that, and we'll see what
But
the
that's
Argos
okay. That's
bring.
okay. That's okay.
Yeah,
Hey, that's okay. By the way, I want to say thank you to everyone watching this today. And one of our viewers on Instagram is Brian Scott of the Toronto Argonauts. So I want to say thank you to Brian and the Argonauts on Instagram for watching us tonight as well. And we're trying to just have a good show. This is a fan podcast for the Toronto Argonauts. And by the way, for anyone that's watching this live stream or listening before we wrap this show up, if you own a small business or a large business and you're looking to advertise your business on the Argo Bounce live audio show, please contact myself or Nick Small if you're interested in becoming aboard as a sponsor for this show as well. Nick, final thoughts before we wrap this up.
go Argos. That's all I gotta say. I hope they prove me wrong this week, because there's definitely a lot of adversity they're gonna have to face over the last two games here, in this stretch at a home and home against Calgary.
And for anyone that wants to go to Argo practice schedule this week, I got this from Mike Hogan off X this morning. Thursday, Friday's practice is from a 1 o'clock or 11 o'clock to 1 o'clock, but the site to be determined. I guess Lamport Stadium is unavailable due to the Caribbean Festival. So anyone going, check Mike Hogan's Twitter X for more information about where their next two practices will be on Thursday and Friday.
Could be influenced by the heat as well. There's been some times where it's been so hot that they've decided to move to indoor practice facility just because of the heat. Like even right now here in Mississauga, it's 84. Our friend who you had the interview on, I know he was critical of some of the really cold weather, but honestly, I think I wouldn't mind the November -5. 2 feet of snow football game right about now. I am not a heat person at all. I will take that cold over the heat.
I agree, Nick. And finally, where can our audience follow you on social media, Nick?
As always, check me out on Twitter, Nick_Small_38.
And you guys can follow me on every social media platform. And I'm on Twitter X quite often at Chris D. Pomay as well. And before we wrap this show up, guys, the next Live with CDP Sports and Entertainment talk show, sponsored by Barry Cullen Chevrolet, is going to be tomorrow, Thursday, August 1st at 4:30 with longtime Buffalo radio personality from WGR 550, Howard Simon, and who he just was introduced into the Buffalo Sports Broadcasting Hall of Fame in 2024. Howard's going to come on and talk about being a Hall of Fame broadcaster, his New York Mets, who he loves, and of course, he's going to talk to us about the Buffalo Bills as well. But looking forward, Nick, to having episode 8 with you next week. Not sure what date and time, but we'll try to figure that out. And I want to say thank you again, Nick, for coming on for episode 7 tonight. And I think it was a good show as always.
Yep, as always, it's what we do, and we love to talk Argonauts football and CFL football more broadly always. So thanks again, Chris, and thanks for everybody who's tuned in. And as always, go Argos.
Good night, Nick. And go Argos. And thank you to everyone watching this live streamed on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, X, and Instagram. And thank you to everyone listening to all of this. Thank you to everyone for listening to this on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, YouTube Music, etc. And thank you to everyone listening to this broadcast on WQE 99.1 FM. And I'm looking forward to these big CFL games. And again, Toronto, Calgary, Sunday night, 7 o'clock kickoff from McMahon Stadium. And unfortunately, I have the Stamps winning this game 24-17, and I hope I'm wrong, but it should be a great game. Looking forward to the BC Winnipeg game tomorrow night, Montreal Hamilton Friday, Edmonton Saskatchewan Saturday, and Toronto and Calgary as well. So again, I want to say thank you to Nick Small for coming on, and thank you everyone for watching and listening to the Argo Bounce live audio show, a weekly podcast show devoted to the CFL's 18-time Grey Cup champion, Toronto Argonauts. I hope everybody has a great night and enjoy the CFL games this weekend. And as always, go Argos.
Go, Toronto Argos, go, go, go. Pull together, fight the foe, foe, foe. Scoring touchdowns for the blue on blue. The Argos will win for you. Full of fight and courage, you can't stop. They pile up the points until they reach the top. Pull together till the Grey Cup's won. Go Argos, go, go, go. Go, Toronto Argos, go, go, go. Pull together, fight the foe, foe, foe. Scoring touchdowns for the blue on blue. The Argos will win for you. Full of fight and courage, you can't stop. They pile up the points until they reach the top. Pull